could build a wood boiler or wood plant in this state. They're doing it in Ashland,
Right.
and they're doing it down in Cassville, Wisconsin.
That gets to the core of what I think is the bigger question. I mean, every community needs the right to be able to not only generate and manage energy on a meaningful level, but also to be able to experience some of the jobs associated with it.
Exactly.
Can I give a little input into this? Okay. Along the question about burning wood for electricity, like a biomass type plant that actually up in Wausau there's one proposed that would provide steam for the paper mill while putting electricity into the system, and it would provide jobs and things like that locally. The problem with Wisconsin at this stage of the game is back in 1996 the state actually used a plan for changes in the system. Xcel added more customers, they needed some support of the transmission network, and they'd look at things that could meet that need, like building new generation, a conservation program, upgrading the transmission line. They threw that all out the window in 1996, 98, somewhere in that area. And so now the state has a process where they just kind of look at, here's where we're at, and there is no planning. So, ATC is a company that is a transmission company. So every solution for every problem, as far as the American Transmission Company is concerned, is a transmission solution. There is no look at generation. And that's one of the things that really, as a group of citizens, we got to look at trying to help change as well, that we can get back to a process that actually does some planning instead of just allowing companies like ATC to say everything is a transmission solution. In reality, what makes a lot more sense, instead of bringing all this electricity from big coal-fired power plants in Dakota, or even necessarily wind farms, is if you could set up your generation on what we call a distributed network locally, where, okay, maybe it's a wind turbine or a wind farm, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a biomass plant, and you also have a town like Cashton that wants to put up a 5-megawatt solar array, something like that. So that you have this electricity being produced locally that gets used locally, instead of having to try and have this massive network moving this stuff all over the place. Then the benefits of the power generation stay in the local area by providing your electricity locally, not having to move it all the way across the country. The reliability of the system goes up, and if you get away from a transmission network that's just made up of a handful of transmission lines, I'm sure you've probably already heard, well, Minnesota has 18 lines, Illinois has 24, Wisconsin only has 6, or whatever the magic number is today. That's why we need to build more. If you could get away from that concept where you had multiple smaller distributed generation, if you lose a couple of power sources, Cashton solar array is down because their transformer's out, but there's 100 other sources that are available. Whereas if you build a Badger Coulee line, run the thing up to capacity, if that drops out of service, all of a sudden it's a catastrophe as far as reliability is concerned. So, yeah, everything with ATC is a transmission solution, but in reality, it's not the best solution for the people that are sitting in this room or the state of Wisconsin.
Would it be beneficial for this organization or anyone here to get in contact with the Wisconsin Timber Professionals Association?
Yes, Paul Baker, is Paul here?
And have them, talk to their representatives
Absolutely.
and managers for this?
Paul Bader is in charge of the biomass generator, the cogen proposal, and yes, that's exactly what they're doing. Any community can do that.
Any linkages that we can make with other groups to promote an environment like that make a lot of sense. It's definitely in everybody's best interest to move that direction. So yeah, I mean, any contacts we can make, I say we go for it, because what's the worst that happens is that they say, I love that idea, let's work together.
I think that the big question there is breaking the flow, is breaking the trend. Since we have this really slow growth period, now is the time to do the kind of planning where we put together conservation, we put together appropriate scale transmission, we don't overbuild, and we move in ways that build jobs and all that stuff forward. We're not going to be able to turn off these coal plants. We're not going to be able to, but we can start to think about what our other options are. And if we just go to these things and say it should run over here, please don't put it in my yard, and walk away, clearly the way that the structure is set up publicly in terms of participation, in terms of relying on our state. Most people, when I go to these town meetings, don't really even pay attention to me for the first 10 or 15 minutes because they assume that some politician, some state agency, some person somewhere has reviewed this proposal and decided it's in the best interest of the public to build it, right? Because that's the world we kind of grew up in. But as Tom alluded to, things have changed, and that's no longer the case. So we really need to shift that ball. We have the numbers. We are the users. We paid for this. We have the numbers. There's no reason that we can't get a good dialogue to happen. But it's not going to happen unless we do. Transmission situation. How many people in this room live within 1,500 feet or so of a proposed corridor? You go and talk to your neighbors down the way. And I'm going to be listening because I'm sensitive to viewscapes, okay? But you move down the road, people are just kind of go like, oh, my life is so complicated. You got to go to their door 3 or 4 times sometimes to get it. But if you get a chance to sit down with them and you talk about some of these initiatives and some of the directions and some of the decisions and some of their pocketbook ramifications, and is it okay for us to spend, for every $10 that we spend on transmission, only spend $1 on efficiency? Does that really make sense? Right? Those kinds of things people will understand, and then we can build it.